Dun, 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 dun.
So many iconic monsters are steeped in rich and lore and history, but those details are rarely reflected in mechanics. Well, today we discuss Legendary Eminences, a new Kickstarter that offers us an opportunity to place these narrative details at the center of our encounters, and man, do I love it. Hello and welcome, heroes, to the Crit Academy. I am your host, Justin.
I'm your guest, Ray.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
And I'm your co-host, Brandon.
Today, we hope to inspire you with creative content that you can bring with you on your next adventure. Today, Ray, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to talk about Emery's log of Legendary Eminences. Before we delve into that, though, can you tell our audience a little bit about you and what you do in the world of, role-playing games and D&D?
Absolutely. First, I want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm
You're welcome.
a longtime dungeon master and a player of Dungeons & Dragons, but I also host the Running Off the Rails podcast. And more recently, I've been working on Emery's log of Legendary Eminences, which is a Kickstarter.
That is something I'm super excited for, to be honest. When I stumbled across this, I was just like, this is glorious. Like we mentioned before the show, this is a problem I didn't know I had. And I'm so glad that somebody came up with a solution to this problem because let's be honest, as players, how horrible is it when you pull out your big bastard spell, you're ready to just destroy the boss, and the DM's like, he ignores it. No, it just bounces off their scales. It's ray cancels your spell. It is horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible, right?
Or just having a ability nerfed for no apparent reason out of the blue.
Well, you've solved that. You saw this as a problem, didn't you, Raymond?
Yeah, so I think it was maybe about a year ago. I was watching somebody streaming, just talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and they were saying that they hate legendary resistances. And I usually agree with everything that the streamer is talking about. I'm like, this person gets it. And then this was the thing that I had cognitive dissonance over. I was like, what? I love legendary resistances. Like, I love being, as a player, like picking out my spells, deciding which spell isn't my most powerful ability, but is debilitating enough where the dungeon master is going to use a legendary resistance. And then when they do, that's awesome for me. But this person hates legendary resistances. That's crazy. Why? And then they were talking about it, and they were saying that it doesn't make sense to them. The players want to use their coolest abilities. It feels weird that they can't use their coolest abilities. They have to choose their abilities that are kind of cool. And I was like, okay, I get it. You're right, but I want people to love and interact with legendary resistances the way that I see them. So how can I spice them up, give them narrative consequences so that they are fun to interact with in the ways that I love interacting with them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that that's something that we all kind of realize once it's pointed out to us. And so I'm really excited to talk about your kind of details here. For everyone to get really into the setting and the emotion of this Emery's log of Legendary Eminences, I feel like we need to know who Emery the Eclectic is.
So Emery the Eclectic is this is this ancient archmage who was an adventurer ages ago and retired ages ago and has been hopping around the multiverse, visiting different planes of existence, different timelines. When we were thinking about who Emery was, the Doctor Who kind of came to mind as kind of like someone who is similar in fantasy and fiction. And Emery's log of Legendary Eminences is Emery's recording of these named creatures that she's encountered across her travels that weren't just adult red dragons or ancient red dragons or just a lich or just a Tarask. These creatures were like the pinnacles of the toughest versions of these monsters that they've had to, that she's combated and in some cases like run away to different planes to go and search for ways of defeating them when that monster catches up with her on that next plane of existence, or that next timeline that she jumps to. So Emery's log is the recording of all of these legendary eminence abilities that she's encountered. And we also have some anecdotes in the supplement written from her perspective about some of the named creatures she's encountered. And the Kickstarter video kind of gives kind of like a sneak peek of what those different anecdotes might look like or feel like.
I was just looking at this, and I feel like it's only a couple minutes. Maybe we can probably show it to the audience so they have a good feeling as we delve into exactly what legendary eminences are. What do you think?
I think that sounds awesome. I love the video. I was blown away when my friend JJ showed me the first draft of it, and I think it inspires me. So I hope it'll have the same.
Well, let's share it with the audience then.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Legendary resistances represent the most dullest of defenses my enemies have managed to muster. However, some monsters I have happened across in my travels utilize their epic fortitudes to fuel deadly talents.
Sexy.
I know.
I name these abilities Legendary Eminences and immortalize them for all of you to read here in this log. The poisonous fogs of the Lich King Zaub. This Mortis Nebula sapped the strength of my companions, dropping them one by one. It was a perfectly timed polymorph that forced Zaul to use his last legendary resistance. His expenditure of magical reserves finally lifted the fogs and the exhaustion they caused my allies. The explosive runes of the fire tyrant, Eichthos. It is not often that a fire giant lives long enough to manifest a legendary resistance. I admit I was surprised when my disintegrate did not reduce Eichthos to a pile of smouldering ash. But he wasn't so lucky the second time.
Who is this voice actor?
The illusory duplicates of the verdant defender Melwraith. Melwraith's guile and cunning know no equal, and the dragon can repurpose magical energies reserved for legendary resistances as mirror images.
That's so cool.
Though the sword and arrow may trouble itself with choosing a target, my fireballs do not discriminate. The illusions vanished one by one as Melwraith defended against my conflagration. Then Melwraith burned with her precious forest. Should you face a foe armed with a legendary eminence in your travels, do send them my regards as you strip them of their final legendary resistance.
Oh my goodness. My goodness.
Yeah, it gives me chills. I mean, Phoebe did such a good job with the voice acting. It
really was awesome.
It's like,
she nailed it. So there's a lot going on here. She touched on kind of what legendary eminences are, but because she's narrating it, it's a little more narrative focused. Can we talk a little bit about the mechanic and what its actual pure function is in the stem and in the way of a D&D monster stat block? I know you brought a couple samples for us to talk about today and exactly how they work together.
Yeah, so I would love to. The way that a legendary eminence works is it's an ability that is active from the start of combat that just exudes the flavor of the monster you're fighting against. So you're already getting some extra narrative element of the monster that you're fighting against present from the start of combat. The adult green dragon is one of my favorite examples. Green dragons in Dungeons and Dragons lore are the most like magical and the most like cunning and conniving dragon. But when you look at the stat block, it kind of just feels like the poison breath dragon is kind of how it feels to me, at least. So it's like, how can we add something here that makes this green dragons feel slippery? Like you can't get your hands on them. So we added mirror images. So the dragon refreshes mirror images at the start of its turn, equal to the number of legendary resistances that are remaining. So it makes it really hard to hit the dragon, but while they still have legendary resistances. So we hope that this will kind of add a natural phase to the combat, or phasing to the combat, where first your party is trying to target legendary resistances to get rid of enough of those refreshing mirror images, where your people who are trying to target hit points as opposed to spell save DCs are able to punch through. So there's a few design things that we're trying to nail here, and we hope that we do, which is that legendary resistances in their current form almost act as a completely separate health bar that like half of your party is working against. So it's a race, right? Or do the people who are dealing damage get the monster to 0 hit points first, or do the spellcasters who aren't dealing any damage, maybe, do they maybe they're casting fireballs and stuff like that, so they are targeting hit points, but maybe they're trying to use Feeble Mind or Polymorph or Banishment, all these iconic spells, the Maze spell, and they're not targeting hit points at all. And if the creature gets to 0 hit points, the spellcasters who are targeting legendary resistances feel like they didn't contribute anything to that combat. And if you Feeble Mind the enemy, then what about all of the damage that your fighter did? Like that doesn't matter either. The monster was defeated at full hit points or 1 hit point. So by making it harder for any character to approach these creatures, to get into melee with them, while this aura or these different types of auras and eminences are up, we're hoping that the party collaborates, comes up with a plan to get rid of the resistances first, enough of the resistances first, and then the plan shifts into phase 2, where we can now get our hands on this monster.
So this reminds me, I was a big fan of one of the dead game Wildstar, and they had in there called Interrupt Armor, where the group had to work together using collective interrupts and abilities that would weaken it just so you could do damage or do stuns or something. And that very much reminds me of this. And I think it is a very, not only did you nail making the legendary resistance flavorful and the new power that you gave them more flavor, they're now incentivized to not use it, which is just mind-blowing when you think about it. So kudos to you. Dulcinea says, this sounds incredibly interesting, and I'll have to rewatch the stream to see what I missed. So I know Ian had a comment on here, and I think just with the Green Dragon example, I feel like you really did succeed at your goal here, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to see all of the rest of the monsters in here. Did you want to touch on something?
I'm picturing like with like the Black Dragon, for example, him have like a acid cloud ability, and then the less legendary resistance there are left, just along with the cloud.
Oh, that's nice.
And I think you nailed something that was very important to us here. So you just came up with that eminence. Like you were inspired, like, okay, I've seen an example. Now my big bad that I have, what's their eminence? And that is really what we're trying to do here with, like, here are legendary eminences. Please use them at your tables because we think they're awesome. Here are 36 examples. You don't need to use these examples. They give you different seeds, thought seeds, where now you can innovate on your own legendary eminences. And obviously I really want people to use some of the abilities we've come up with because I think they're awesome. But if eminences make your game more exciting, more narrative, more dynamic, then the product was a success.
Did you have anything to add to that, B?
No.
So in the next one, you talk about the adult copper dragon. So
yeah, I heard that. What the hell? Is that affecting the dragon's allies or the players?
So why don't you tell us about the reveal for your let's talk about this as a reveal for our show. Is this something that's not currently visible on the Kickstarter? Is that what that is?
Yep. So for coming on your guys' show, I've come with I think it was 2 abilities that we haven't announced anywhere yet, and one is the first metallic dragon eminence that we're revealing. So what we wanted to do with exactly what we wanted to do with the metallic eminences was we wanted them to be more of kind of like a buff instead of because we could have given the gold dragon like a fiery eminence also. And we could have given the silver dragon like a cold storm that follows them around. But in the lore, I feel like metallic dragons kind of like arise to inspire heroes is kind of what it's been. So, and I gave you guys the copper dragon, right? I'd want to make sure that I don't spoil a different metallic dragon. So I'm just going to read. Can I read the eminence? I feel like that gets the.
Go ahead, of course. Cool. You're a podcaster, so you got to give us the voice.
Yeah, well, it's I don't have a podcaster voice, so here you go. The air surrounding the copper dragon ripples with dramatic tension. It is said that those that fight alongside these braggadocious metallic companions can hear the events of the battle narrated telepathically in their minds in epic fashion as the events unfold. The barbarian does not slash at the enemy Death Lord. She cleaves his breastplate in twain. While the dragon has its legendary resistance available, each creature of the dragon's choice that is within 45 feet of the dragon becomes affected by its Theater of Champions feature. When a creature affected by Theater of Champions makes an ability check or attack roll, the creature can add a D8 to the number rolled to the result. Each time the dragon uses its legendary resistance, the area affected by Theater of Champions decreases by 15 feet.
Is this like a boosted bless?
Yes.
Because that is awesome.
It sounds horrifying.
Destruction. All of it.
We just want when I wrote this one. There are 4 other authors for Emery's Log of Legendary Eminences: Ariel, John, and Ian, who are all credited on the Kickstarter page. Please go check out the Dragon Mind podcast, which is John and Ian. But this one's my baby. I wrote this one. What I was picturing here was you have this metallic dragon companion, and you're rolling into battle against some chromatic dragon, and because you're squatting out with this metallic dragon, just all of everything that you do is that much more epic. That attack that would have missed hits. That stealth check that you make as the rogue to try and hide so that you can get sneak attack succeeds. So I pictured this because my players are we're doing Rise of Tiamat, or they're segueing from Out of the Abyss into Rise of Tiamat. So they've just gotten to the surface, and I was like, okay, cool. So the players are going to ally themselves with metallic dragons, and they're going to go and stop the resurrection of Tiamat. That's not what my players did. They decided that they are allying with the Cult of the Dragon, because why not?
Of course, why not?
So now my players are going to be fighting alongside chromatic dragons, which have these very kind of offensive or kind of singular abilities, and they're going to be fighting against all these boosted minions. So it's going to be very, very interesting. I did not foresee events unfolding that way.
That adds another layer of complexity to what you've designed, because now it becomes a priority to remove or do what you can to remove the big boss or weaken its legendary eminence, because if you don't, even little goblins are going to skewer you.
Of turning left and you wanted.
I imagine like a bunch of farmers, and they're like really scary because they're being boosted by this metallic dragon.
So when you're running something like this, how would you narratively give the players themselves the clue that this is in effect? Like, would it be like a visible aura that they would see, or?
I think that I would probably take kind of like a hint from the description, and I would tell the players that they hear the voice of the copper dragon kind of narrating their actions, and like maybe if they were about to swing and they could see it missing, they hear in their mind like what's a good hero name? Gawain the Brave cleaves the goblin in two, or something like that, and all of a sudden the sword is kind of like given extra speed and kind of like shifts over to the right magically, and the attack finishes, and it looks spectacular, whereas you would have missed before. And now the player starts to realize that it's almost like they can't fail. Like the story is being written despite, like, as a success, as a heroic tale in real time, despite maybe their fatigue, which would have maybe made that attack miss otherwise.
There's a free resource on our free section of our website where it's a Cobalt victory chart, and every time they land a blow or knock somebody unconscious, you roll this thing, and I feel like that would just be so like perfect mix with this. The Cobalt spits on you, stands on your chest, and pounds his own.
It makes me think of like when you're out working, you got an earbud in, and you're listening to that one song, and it starts getting you pumped up when you get stuff done. You get those chills up your spine. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
That's how I'm feeling. So, you mentioned 36 of these.
On that note, do not listen to chasing music when driving on the expressway.
Oh Jesus! Because I know.
Just shifting up. You just keep shifting.
What gear are you in? Gear.
I'm in G. What is G? Go. All right. So you mentioned 36 of these. The next one you brought with us is actually a creature that doesn't have legendary resistances in the monster manual. Can you tell us a little bit about this monster and why you decided to go that direction?
You're talking about the fire giant, right?
I am.
Sure. Cool. Okay.
That's my show notes, unless I'm mistaken. Yeah. Does it have I didn't think it had a legendary resistance.
It does now.
It does.
Gotcha.
So the fire giants we had to fight before. I want to know what it would have been.
Yeah.
You're the one that vanished?
Yeah, vanishing prick. So can you tell us a little bit about this, Ray?
Well, so that's the point exactly. So for the longest time, I've been running CR like 5 to 10 monsters with a single legendary resistance, because players get polymorph at level 7. You know, like it's like just like they're invalidating those young dragon encounters, those giant encounters, the encounter with the assassin, because there's this weird zone where players have these combat ending spells, but creatures don't have legendary resistances yet, and then they like kick in all at once. So there's a bunch of creatures that I've been running with a single legendary resistance for a really long time. So we took a bunch of those iconic monsters that don't have legendary resistances, and we gave them a legendary resistance and a legendary eminence that interacts that has a single legendary resistance. So the eminence is active, and then when that resistance goes away, it's inactive. It doesn't get weaker like the other legendary eminences. So
I feel like that's a really good balance that you did there. So instead of having it degrade, it's either there or it's not. And that's a good balance for creatures that don't have it, that you're now adding them to, which is pretty cool, I think.
Yep, I'm with Andrew. Normal resistances and weaknesses should be used way more. And they used to be in previous editions, but they kind of walked back on it for simplicity, for better or worse.
So if you follow us and you know we have a Patreon, you'll notice that all the monsters that I've been making all have additional vulnerabilities and also more immunities, including specific weapon types like bludgeoning and pierce. Anyway, so
I still laugh at the fact that werewolves raw can't actually hurt each other.
That's really funny.
Yeah,
because they're immune to non-magical physical attacks, and they only do non-magical physical attacks.
I got into a discussion on Facebook about somebody having a big zeppelin full of werewolves that just drop out and invade an entire village, crash landing like meteors right into the center of the keep's little courtyard, and he's like, "That seems like bullshit."
But fall damage is not bludgeoning damage. It's fall damage.
Well, there's that weird technicality where there's some creatures that have like a charge ability, and if it hits the creature that got hit is knocked prone. Like there's no save. So I think it's like the elk. The elk can technically knock the Tarrasque prone if it just hits with its charge attack, which is really funny.
It's like stepping on a stupid Lego.
It's like how you can grapple a gelatinous cube, or trip it, even though it's Ooze.
Even though it's an ooze. All right. So what exactly? So we've talked a little bit about the fire giant getting a legendary resistance. Did you touch on what it actually does?
What is the legendary resistance?
No, so I won't read the whole Eminence this time, but for fire giants, we were reading the lore of fire giants, and they have this kind of like not so often talked about culture. All the giants have like very different cultures, which is not really talked about. So we had a really good opportunity to inject these different giant society cultures into their stat block. And for the fire giant, they have a rich tradition of, it's almost like a feudal society where they smith, and they're very martial. They're very good with their weapons, very practiced with their weapons. So when you make a melee attack against the fire giant and you miss, it collides with the giant's like runic armor that they have smithed themselves instead, and it triggers a concussive burst of flame. The attacking creature is pushed back 5 feet, and all creatures within 10 feet of the giant must succeed a DC 14 Dexterity saving throw or take 2d4 fire damage.
I love that. That is so cool. And I agree with Andrew. A gelatinous cube is just a dungeon Roomba. What is that? Dungeon. There's a picture of a dungeon Roomba. That's hilarious.
She found the
really funny.
That's hilarious.
Have you guys seen the videos of the Roomba like finding dog poop and then just smearing the dog poop out throughout the entire apartment?
Oh, it's so gross.
We got to like, here's why we shouldn't get a dog. Like, what? What's wrong? Oh my god!
So gross.
Yeah.
So I really think what you've done here is something special. And I hope that everyone that's listening now, or watching now, or listening when the podcast goes live, swings over and supports your product, because I really think this is something that the game really needed.
I now know what Dennis was missing.
Oh God. Inside joke.
When I get paid next, I will. I want a copy of this.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is something that you've done really, really well. I can see the passion for it in your eyes. And you solved a problem most people don't know they have. So you're going to have lots of success here with Emery's log of legendary eminences. This is certainly
It slips off the tongue, doesn't it?
It really does. And the other, there's something else that I like about these. When Volo's Guide first came out, when they took the direction of narrating it from an in-game character's perspective, I think that is one of the best things you can do, because it allows you to easily inject tidbits of the world's lore from the perspective of somebody living there, which is far more engaging and interesting to read, even if it's through short little nuggets on the sides of the pages and little, blocks, which I think, damn it, dude. And I think you've managed to do that quite well. I see that there's one right on your Kickstarter page for Calamity Incarnate by Emery, and I think that it's well written. The lore is very juicy, and I think that's going to appeal to a lot of people beyond just the amazing mechanics that you've kind of developed around this legendary resistance problem. And I'm officially right here, make it known, I consider it a problem now, because I didn't before. Now it's certainly a problem. I'm saying that out loud. Wizards of the Coast, if you're listening, I know they are.
Now, this Emery character, is that a Forgotten Realms character?
No. It's unique to them.
Would not be if we wanted to go to Kickstarter.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't publish the IP owned by somebody else, except for on DM's Guild, where they give you exclusive permission to do so, and not even all their stuff. So, before we move on to the next segment here, is there any other talking points you wanted to touch on? I think you've really done an amazing job. If you haven't picked this up yet, please go do it. They are over 1,000% funded and are climbing. So help bring this project to life. Help them reach their. Do you have any more stretch goals?
I actually, so I forgot to mention.
Let's talk about those.
In talking about the actual mechanics. So we had no idea that people were going to latch onto this project the way that they did. So the first thing we did was we were like, okay, well, let's just make more stuff. So before we could come up with any stretch goals, because we needed to think about those pretty carefully, we came up with a thank you gift that we wanted to just include with the product that we knew we could produce pretty quickly. And one of those, the thank you gift is we're making 10 magic items that interact directly with legendary resistances and legendary eminences. So
very nice.
One such example is a legendary weapon archetype. So you can choose the type of weapon that you want it to be in your world and the name for it. But what it does is when you hit with the weapon, you can choose to take on a level of exhaustion in order to immediately eliminate one legendary resistance.
I think that's in our magic item for the episode.
Oh shoot! I ruined it. Okay, so I won't tell any other ones, and I'll explain another magic item when we get to that section of the show. And then we did come out with stretch goals that I just wanted to list off at $2,500. We're going to release an encounter with Za'ul the Lich King, which is one of the named enemies that appears in the promotional materials for the Kickstarter. And we're going to create a battle map for that encounter. We're going to give him plot hooks for your world that you can choose from. And then JJ, who is the extremely talented individual, Jordan Sirkin, who animated the Kickstarter video, is going to create animated battle maps for his Mortis Nebula ability. So liches have this like sickly fog and mist that surrounds them while their legendary resistances are active. Jordan's going to create 3 different animated versions of the battle map with the animated fog. So as your players are stripping legendary resistances, you can swap into the battle map that has fog that is animated, that is less dense, and then eventually it'll just be the raw battle map without any mist.
That is so cool. I really love that. Very cool. So once again, if you're watching this, listening to it later, head on over to is it rebrand.ly/legendary eminences and check this out, please. It's fantastic. And we've only talked just a little bit about what is here, and it's going to be effing amazing just by looking at the samples that we've got. So if you hear a little bit of background noise, it's raining very, very hard.
And the roof is metal.
So I'm sorry for that.
The angels are shitting on it.
They're pissing, actually. Or they eat.
I like to imagine that you guys chose to make the roof metal. You had the different options, and you were like, what could go wrong with metal?
We're pretty metal people. All right.
I'm like the least metal person in existence.
There's my book.
It's right here. It's in my lap.
Give it to me. All right, so before we move on to our Unearthed tips and tricks, we have to take a moment to tell you guys about Jeff Stevens' Freak Show collection. If you have not at all experienced either Madhouse of Tasha's Kiss, or Happy Jack's Funhouse, or Annalise's Revenge, you are missing out. These are literally some of the best products on the DMs Guild, and now they are bundled into a 3-part book that are all interconnected. And I want to talk a little bit, just real quick, about some of the things that they do. I think they get it, Ian. Some of the things that I think that really make it stand out. Madhouse of Tasha's Kiss, first of all, jumps into all the details regarding to madness, short-term and long-term madness, and introduces new flaws to your characters, which is something you don't see very often. And the one thing that he did in Happy Jack's Funhouse that just is, it's every little funhouse romp you've done, but in a very twisted and crazy way. Jeff Stevens and Remley Farr are really good about getting that twisted. Oh, yeah. People eating each other. It's all kinds of weird. But what I really want to touch on is what they did in Annalise's Revenge. The whole thing takes place in like a opera theater, and the villains are like alto and soprano and bass, and there's actually entire scenes that you can hand out to the players and let them act out the plays that's going on while they're there, which is just really, really cool. He really did a wonderful job. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to Jeff's talk show. If you haven't checked it out, just like us, he decided he likes talking a lot and wanted to share it with the world. So Jeff Stevens talks RPGs. You can check it out where he speaks with other RPG creators and producers about the RPG industry, game design, and more. We think you will specifically like episode 3, where he speaks with Ed Greenwood, that bastard.
Like the SOB.
Right, creator of Forgotten Realms. So you definitely got to check it out. You can find Jeff Talks on Twitch, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor. Please check it out. Can I just say how beautiful the artwork is in this thing? And the artwork is disgustingly creepy, too. And, I mean, look at this big old, you guys can't see it, but it's a disgusting fat, merchant guy, and it's pretty gross. So if you like that sort of stuff, that horror vibe, you like delving into character personality alterations, it's definitely a must-have.